You can imagine the wind first. A low and steady hum drawn across a spine of stone that runs for thousands of miles. The air is thin, carrying dust from distant deserts, cold even in the morning. Along that long, uneven ribbon of wall, a path of watchtowers, steps. In crumbling parapets, the sound of history drifts like breath against the stones. The Great Wall of China is not one wall, but many built, rebuilt, and mended by countless hands over centuries. It snakes through mountains and plains, across rivers and deserts, each section a quiet memory of vigilance. It was once alive with footsteps and signal fires, echoing with the rhythm of a duty that never ended. In this story, we travel to a time when the wall was still watched during the Ming Dynasty, when it stood as both barrier and promise. We will listen to the slow, repetitive life of its watchmen, the builders and guards who spent their years gazing out across endless horizons. Theirs was a life of waiting for dawn, for the change of the wind, for the faintest sign of motion beyond the border. Their days were not filled with glory, but with patience. And as we walk with them in thought through their quiet hours, we might come to understand the rhythm of a world held together by endurance. The mornings began before the sun. The wind often woke the watchman first, a soft whistle through the cracks in the tower walls, the dry rustle of grass against the ramparts. They would stir from straw mats or rough bedding, pulling on thick robes against the cold, stepping carefully into the pale light. Outside, the horizon was wide and blue-gray. The wall stretched like a sleeping dragon, its back rising and falling over ridges and valleys. Smoke from small hearths curled into the still air as others woke to prepare rice porridge or boil water for tea. Each watchman had his post, a section of wall, a tower to climb, a direction to face. Some would check the fire baskets still blackened from the night before. Others would inspect the beacons of dried reeds and brush, stacked and ready to burn in times of danger. Their work was steady, methodical, and unchanging. When the sun broke over the mountains, it bathed the stone in soft gold. The cracks and carvings glowed faintly, and the shadows of the parapets grew long. In that stillness, the wall seemed to breathe, as if the entire structure from its foundations to its watchtowers was alive in the morning air. Most days, nothing happened. The watchmen paced their routes, watching birds glide over the plains below. They repaired small stones, checked tools, recorded times. Silence was their constant companion. The wall demanded attention, even in quiet, its height, its edges, its strength. At midday, they would rest beneath the shadow of the tower, eating simple food. Steamed millet, pickled vegetables, sometimes dried meat carried from the villages below. Conversation was sparse, carried on in low tones, lost easily to the wind. And when night came, they lit their torches, their light flickering against the vast dark. The stars above seemed close enough to touch. From one tower to another, faint glows would appear, small fires dotting the mountain ridges, like constellations mirrored on the ground. In those moments, standing beside the flame, listening to the distant cry of an animal or the whisper of shifting sand, the watchmen felt both part of the world and entirely apart from it. Their labor was not glorious, but it was lasting. Each night was a repetition of the one before, and each morning began again, the wall stretching endlessly, the same duties waiting to be done. During the Ming Dynasty, the Great Wall took on its most enduring form. What had once been a collection of earthen fortifications became a vast, continuous defense, reinforced with brick, stone, and mortar. Under emperors like Hongwu and Yonggul, thousands of miles of battlements were built and connected. Watched over by countless soldiers and laborers, the men stationed along the wall were not warriors of legend, but ordinary soldiers drawn from distant villages. Many had never seen the capital. They lived in outposts that were isolated for months, sometimes years, connected only by the chain of towers and the duty that bound them. Each tower had its rhythm, the rotation of shifts, the maintenance of fires, the writing of reports. Smoke signals were the lifeblood of the system. Riders were seen approaching the border. A single fire was lit, followed by another in the next tower. And another beyond that, a cascade of warnings leaping from ridge to ridge faster than any messenger could travel. To light such a signal was both routine and momentous. It meant that danger was near, that the world beyond the wall, the steppe, the desert, the horizon itself, was stirring. The flames were bright and brief, yet their message could move an army. Some records describe entire garrisons who lived their lives without once lighting a warning fire. Others, stationed along the restless northern frontiers, burned them so often that the air was thick with the smell of ash. But in all cases, the discipline remained the same: to watch, to wait, to be ready. In these long patrols, history moved slowly. Empires rose and fell, yet the watchmen remained. Their eyes scanned the same horizons, their hands touched the same stones, their fires burned with the same purpose. It is said that during quiet nights, they would carve small marks into the walls, initials, prayers, even simple drawings of home. These traces are still found in some towers today, faint but enduring, the only signatures left by those who once kept the empire's edge alive. The wall, in its vastness, holds secrets. Hidden along its stones are messages, not the official inscriptions of emperors, but the quiet graffiti of time. Archaeologists have found marks that seem to tell stories. Some are symbols, circles, lines, and spirals, carved deep into the rock. Others are names, scratched with the tip of a blade, often half erased by centuries of weather. Still others appear to be messages written in charcoal or ink, now faint, almost unreadable. Some of these marks seem practical: notes on construction, measurements of stone, or instructions for later work. But others are more mysterious. On one isolated section, a series of burned impressions was found, characters pressed into the wall with the heat of a torch. No one knows their meaning. Some scholars think they were signals, a code used among watchmen who shared the same long nights. In other places, stone carvings resemble constellations, small holes drilled into the surface, lined with the stars above. Perhaps they were used for navigation, or perhaps they were simply an expression of awe from men who spent their lives beneath open skies. Whatever their purpose, these marks speak of presence. They remind us that the wall was not just built and left, it was inhabited. It was lived in, walked upon, touched by hands that sought meaning in repetition. Even now, if you walk along the wall in the quiet of dawn, you might see a groove worn into a step where countless feet once stood, or a cornerstone smoothed by the brushing of a sleeve. The mysteries of the wall are not only in what is hidden, but in what remains in plain sight. The residue of waiting, of endurance, of time made visible. From the Emperor's palace in Beijing, the Great Wall stretched like an arm, reaching toward the horizon, a symbol of control, of power, of the empire's farthest reach. But to the watchman on his lonely post, it was simply home. He might never see the emperor's face, never hear the decisions made in the Forbidden City. His world was smaller, the tower, the stones, the view of the same valley each morning. Yet in that narrow life he carried the weight of an entire civilization. Oh, the contrast is striking between the grandeur of imperial ambition and the solitude of those who sustained it. For the empire, the wall was a monument. The watchman, it was a companion, a constant presence through years of wind and snow. When storms came, they huddled beneath its arches. When the heat of summer cracked the mortar, they patched it with their own hands. When they died, as some did, far from their homes, their graves were dug in the shadow of the same stone they had guarded. The Great Wall was meant to divide, to separate one world from another. Yet for those who lived upon it, it became a bridge of endurance, connecting countless lives through shared purpose. And now, centuries later, the wall endures still. Empire's gone. The fires long extinguished, but the stones remain, rest beneath drifting clouds and the calls of distant birds. A monument not only to the rulers who commanded its construction, but to the quiet, patient souls who stood watch upon it. If you close your eyes, you might hear it, the faint whisper of wind across high stones, the echo of footsteps long faded, the low hum of silence that fills the spaces between the mountains. The Great Wall is no longer guarded, yet in its quiet persistence, it still keeps its vigil. The work of those forgotten watchmen endures in every curve of the path, every weathered tower that still looks out over the plains. Their world was one of solitude, repetition, and faith in purpose, a world built not on conquest, but on constancy. And as you drift, perhaps you can feel a little of what they knew, the calm that comes from stillness, the peace of watching the horizon, the slow passing of time measured not in moments but in centuries. The wall breathes with the earth and its guardians, though long gone, remain in every stone. In every wind that moves through its gaps, in every silence that follows the day,